Right, so we've become accustomed to the sight of Israel's military personnel on mainstream news bulletins, haven't we? Shoveling out propaganda that goes unquestioned in a similar manner to how a farmer might toss manure, and indeed it has stunk just as badly. Independent media, myself and plenty of others have covered numerous examples of these people turning up on our screens as they do and talking about Hamas tunnels on our mainstream media that they found and weapons caches hidden behind very magnetic MRI machines. How very curious. And laptops found in hospital clearly belonging to Hamas with all their nefarious schemes against Israel laid out on the screen, despite them having keyboards printed in Hebrew and not Arabic, and with chargers curiously possessing Israeli serial numbers. The exposure of such poorly organised and blatant lies has made many of these spokespeople laughingstocks. Well, a large number of them have just quit their roles en masse. So who's going to spread your lies for you now then, Bibi? Right, so this story's come as something of a surprise today, though predictably is not being widely covered, as 5 months of propagating propaganda hasn't implied those now all too familiar Israeli Defence Force military faces cropping up on our mainstream news regularly as they do, pointing to alleged evidence of Hamas atrocity and using civilian infrastructure as strongholds, were in any way unhappy with the roles they were filling, spreading lies for Western media and politicians to lap up and keep supporting their genocide under the biggest whopper of them all, that Israel to this day are still acting in self-defense. Well, it seems they aren't happy. Big rifts have broken out, and a number of their top spokespeople, people we've become accustomed to seeing on our screens, have stepped down. Now, some reports have been saying that this includes the man who became a meme, Mr. Pointy himself, Daniel Hagari, the head of the IDF spokesperson's unit, and somebody who was actually parachuted into that unit from outside and hadn't come up through the ranks of the unit as they typically do. This was seen at the time as interference from on high, caused a little bit of disgruntlement, shall we say. But there are conflicting reports on this. Many are saying that it's his number two who has gone, but how it's written might imply it was him. But this doesn't seem to be the case, and it would beg the question of what exactly has gone down that this is so bad, given the chuff this guy has tried selling to the world in the most incompetent ways possible, that he would have had enough. Doesn't appear to be the case. It is unconfirmed. I dare say clarification will come, but come on, he sold some of the worst, most piss-poor attempts at framing Hamas for doing this, that or the other over the last several months. This is the guy who went into a hospital and pointed at a wall and a sign on it claiming these are a list of Hamas operatives with their nefarious schemes all laid out across it, when in actual fact it was just a calendar. He most recently took to the airwaves to announce that the flower massacre in northern Gaza last week didn't happen at all, which the UN Security Council would have blamed Israel for in a unanimous vote, with every nation on it voting to condemn Israel for those killings, now looking more and more like an IDF setup since no aid agency is claiming to have supplied any aid to Israel for that trip. But the US vetoed it, of course, the only ones who backed Israel over that. So could unhappiness with this imposed boss of theirs have been part of the problem? I'd have thought we'd have seen issues before now if that were the case. And if it does come out he has also resigned, and that is firmed up on, I will say Al Jazeera pulled the post saying he'd gone, so it's very much uncertain. But him aside, others definitely have. One chap we can say has definitely gone is that unusually Scottish-sounding IDF Spox by the name of Richard Hecht, originally from Glasgow, hence his accent. Can I assume in the same vein that London-born Shamima Begum has been rendered stateless, he can expect to get the same treatment, though? Oh, what am I saying? For one, of course he wouldn't. He's white, for one, and we don't recognise Israel as a terrorist state for another, and frankly, in my opinion, we should be. But for another, he's Jewish and therefore invited to settle in Israel anyway. Can't be stateless. Here's what he said anyway 2 days ago on Sky about the flower massacre himself, though.
What is the IDF's understanding of what happened around that aid convoy in northern Gaza?
I'll start with what you actually said at the beginning, where the IDF killed 104 people. This is incorrect. We've been trying to facilitate the entrance of humanitarian aid to the north part. We're aware of the dire situation in the north. A very tragic event where there was a convoy moving north on the coastline, and it was mobbed by a stampede of people. Very, very hard, very tragic. The law and order and the looting has been an issue, and we did everything we could. We were trying to accompany, and the only place where the IDF opened fire was on people that endangered our forces There was no such a case, and I know I see you're now showing the movie, where we intentionally fired on people trying to get the aid.
Dishonest as sin, but even he has now gone, apparently quite acrimoniously too. According to Israel's Channel 14, allegedly Hecht had someone from the outside placed on him. So was he being spied on then? Was he compromised in some way? What? It's an odd, cagey choice of words, that. Just say what you mean. Either way, he's gone in a bit of a huff. Others that have apparently gone include Hagari's number 2, who apparently was just retiring. There's another one called Moran Katz, who has claimed things were just not working out for her there, professionally or personally. And others have gone citing a lack of promotion. Well, when you do get your bosses parachuted in from the outside, I guess that can happen. These are the reasons Channel 14 gives anyway, and it has to be borne in mind that they are ferociously loyal to the Netanyahu regime. They're that sort of an outlet. So if you only read their piece, or watch their piece, then you could be forgiven for thinking this is a bit of a non-story. Hard luck to Netanyahu and all that his spokespeople are going in droves. But hang on a minute. They are going in droves. They're going in droves all at once. So these reasons, well, a heck of a lot of coincidence they've all chosen to go at the same time, isn't it? If you look at other foreign media covering this, because none of our media here are mainstream media, for example, Lebanese Al Mayadeen or Iranian Shafaq News or Press TV, the departures are to do with protests within the unit on both personal and operational matters. So the truth is likely somewhere in between. All of these outlets have very distinct biases here which people should be mindful of. This side of the argument implies there's been significant outcry over Netanyahu's direction of travel as regards Rafah. Netanyahu, as we know, is a madman, and he wants the Israeli army to go into Rafah, finish the job, total victory as he calls it, and all that. He wants every single Hamas operative taken out, no matter the cost, in Palestinian lives, as we know, as we've seen. He apparently does not have the backing of the Chief of Staff of the IDF, though, a guy called Herzi Halevi, and that perhaps comes as a surprise to all of us, as there appears to be no depths the IDF won't stoop to. 30,000 dead Gazans, mostly women and children, attest to that. But the out-and-out potential extermination of Gazans who cannot go anywhere else, trapped as they are in Rafah, does seem to be a sticking point for some, according to these media outlets, including Halevi, as according to Al Mayadeen, he favours evacuation of the area and coordinating with Egypt to achieve that. Now, Israel reached Rafah a fortnight ago, and although they attack nightly, they've not flattened the place. They have seemed to be holding back in a way that they haven't previously, for example, when they went into Gaza City or into Khan Yunis. Perhaps there is a reluctance to finish the job, as we observers from points of safety have feared they might. If the propagandists are quitting because they refuse to be apologists for what Netanyahu intends to do next, or wants to do next, if indeed he can convince the Chief of Staff of the IDF to do that, well, fewer people now appear to be prepared to spin it and say why that had to be done in that way. Though, of course, replacements will almost certainly be found. Could we be seeing the IDF actually saying to Bibi enough is enough in the near future? Well, I wouldn't put money on it myself. Those who have gone have already done enough damage. Perhaps they just don't have the stomach for more. Perhaps that is part of this story, and there will be others, more like Netanyahu, who have far fewer qualms about it, coming up through the ranks now, or coming in from somewhere else. Propaganda plays a huge part in Israel being able to get away with what it is getting away with. So aside from having these IDF spokespeople spinning like a top for them, attempts at infiltrating Western media have suddenly become a story as well, as this video recommendation here will tell you all about. I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers, folks.